everyone, Catherine Rhodes here. Time to talk about personnel planning and recruiting. There are several different objectives that we want to accomplish during this chapter, and that's to describe the basic methods of collecting job analysis information, to be able to conduct a job analysis, explain the process of forecasting personnel requirements, compare the 8 methods for recruiting job candidates, and explain how to use an application form to predict job performance. Well, the basics of this is, what is job analysis? Well, job analysis is just the procedure where you determine what the duties are, as well as the characteristics or skill sets that you're looking for the person to be able to do the job. There are 4 main ways that you can do that. You can do interviews, questionnaires, observation, and participant diaries or logs. Interviews are the most widely used because they're so easy to do. It lets workers report what they say they're doing and what's needed to be done, although there can be a lot of difference in what they're actually doing. So it's very important that you understand that sometimes people may exaggerate in doing interviews. You can also use questionnaires, and that's important because that can give you an opportunity to structure the questionnaire and what questions will be asked on there. But however, they should have open-ended questions as well as structured. Then you can observe, and that can be very helpful, but it's very time-consuming. So you can observe them doing physical activity. However, it's not very interesting, or it's very difficult to write down observations when people are in meetings or on the telephone a lot. And so if they do a lot of work that requires a lot of cognitive skills, mental activity, not going to be helpful. You can also ask people to keep a log or a diary. But again, when people self-report, there can always be issues. Sometimes HR's departments will distribute questionnaires via computer or internet and have them return them. So that can be helpful. And then we need to write job descriptions from that information. What is it that you want the person to be able to do? How are they supposed to do it? And what conditions or work environment are they going to be working in? So you can have, what is the job, what are the relationships, what are the responsibilities and duty, do they supervise others, what are the standards of performance, and then the working conditions. So there's all sorts of information that goes into a written job description, and I'm sure some of you have already seen those and may have even helped to do those. Normally companies have information that they require on a job description, so it's a little bit different. So you want to make sure that you have that. You can also look at the Department of Labor. They have a lot of good information according to SIP codes, standard industrial codes, and information that you can use. The one thing that you want to make sure is that you comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, so that it needs to be the essential functions of the job and not just things that may be needed as necessary. So you need to think about those things. Well, when you write a job description, you want to identify the HR or the human traits that predict what candidates will do well on the job and which ones wouldn't. Well, you need to think about making job descriptions more open so that you're analyzing them and not to be restrictive. That's a little bit different. However, you want to look at the competencies. What is it that you want the person to be able to do? So in doing a competency-based job analysis, you want to describe the job in terms of measurable, observable, or behavioral competencies. Be very worker-focused in regard to that. And BP, which is mentioned in the book, stipulates that they have those sort of competency-based job analysis. My husband's company, where he works out at Tate & Lyle, they have skill blocks. So as a person is able to perform more skills, then they receive more pay as well. So a skills matrix may be something that you want to look at and devise for your organization. Well, once you have that information on a job description, then you want to go into the recruiting and selection process. So how many people do you need to do the job? Some of that sometimes depends upon your sales. You want to build a pool of candidates. You don't want to just have one person apply for the job. Then you want to screen the candidates, and you can do that through an interview. And then you want to have selection techniques. Maybe it's interviews, maybe it's you want to give them a job to do and see how they do it. And then you send the candidates to the supervisor and do final interviews. So personnel planning requires predicting how many people that you need to get the job done. In the college, for example, we need to predict how many students we're going to have, and then we build the schedule. When jobs are readily available, then fewer people come to school. When there are fewer jobs, more people come. So you got to know what's going on in the environment around you, and it also has to be collaborative. It's not something that just one person decides on. So you got to forecast what your sales or what your needs are, and then you estimate the size of the staff required. Some of the other things that you need to think about are projected turnover, quality and skills of employees, strategic decisions to upgrade quality of products, the technology changes resulting in increased productivity, such as using the computer as opposed to having people do things by hand. And then what are your financial limitations? So the way that you can do that is you can look at trend analysis, and that's looking at the employment levels and predict them in the future. Or you can say, well, if we're going to have $1 million worth of sales, we need 200 employees. If we're going to do $2 million worth of sales, we're going to need 300 employees. So again, you need to think about what it is that you tie back the number of people or employees that you need. One of the examples that they use and is very common is looking at the number of beds in a hospital and the number of nurses based upon census, or how many people are admitted into the hospital at any given time. So the census, the number of people, the number of patients, will help you to predict how many nurses you need. In addition, you may have people already in the workplace who may be able to take on additional responsibilities, either through promotion or through expanding their job, depending upon, again, the technology sometimes can do that. Sometimes you actually want to have a succession plan in place to help you to see that this is an entry-level job, let's say a clerk, and after a person's been on the job for a while and they've obtained more skill sets, then maybe they're able to move into a better job. So that's a very important thing to think about that. We talk about computerized information sessions, and when I worked at TRW Koya, which is now JTEC in Vonore, we had a succession planning system where we helped to predict how many people of certain backgrounds may be able to move up into different jobs as they went along. And that's important because sometimes people do want to move up in organizations, they want to be promoted. And you can do that by offering career counseling is also very important, having performance-related training and development. And of course, there are sometimes people who want to retire, and you need to have a plan in place to have a successor for them. Sometimes you also need to understand not only internally what candidates you may have, but also externally. So what are the economic conditions of the United States? What are the local market conditions, and sometimes occupational market conditions? Because that too will drive up either how many people you need or how wide of a recruitment area you need to be in. When I worked in the automotive industry, it was not that uncommon for us to bring in people from Ohio and Detroit and from Georgia. So we weren't just looking at local candidates, but statewide candidates. We also had international candidates that would come in and do the job as well. So the more applicants you have, the more selective you can be. And that also leads you to some different things that you can do. One of them that you can do is you can post a job so that people know about it internally. And you can recruit via the internet. There are job boards. There's Craigslist. Craigslist is becoming a very viable method of recruiting, especially for entry-level positions. And it's free, so it's very fast. And people can send you their PDF versions of their CVs, their resumes. You can use advertising. I can remember 20 years ago, that was the method that we used all the time, and you wanted to get your ad in the Sunday paper. And I don't know if anybody's looked at the Sunday paper and the help wanted section, but it is very, very small. You can also use targeted websites or trade or professional journals if you're looking for a particular skill set. However, in some of the print things, and again, print is dying, there can be a week or so that will lapse before that information is out there, although even the Knoxville News Sentinel at this time has electronic ads. You can use temp agencies or employment agencies. Some of them can be like the career centers or privately owned agencies like Ronstadt. There are all sorts of them out there that can help you with that. And sometimes you want to use an agency because you don't have the HR people necessary to do that. Or you want something filled very quickly and they may already have a pool of candidates for that. You can use them for temporary or just-in-time workers. Temp services do that a lot. Usually they're not paid any benefits, and it gives you an opportunity to expand and contract as you need to. Sometimes you'll have non-traditional recruitment sources, such as contracting technical employees, and my husband's company does that a lot. And I've also worked at companies where we outsourced or had contract technical employees through an agency, and that works pretty well. You can use executive recruiters or headhunters, and I have used those in the past, and they normally make anywhere between 10 and 20% of the first year's salary of the individual. And if you work with a really good recruiter, they will find you the best. They will also, I had a recruiter who was very good and came and visited the facility, and we built a relationship, and he was very good at finding the right people for me for engineering and tool and die. And that's very important when you're in a specialized area. But it is expensive and it can be time consuming. So you want to make sure that you're dealing with somebody reputable. But you could also use college recruiting and interns or co-ops. And we did that a lot too at a couple of different companies, especially co-op engineers. And sometimes we would have openings and we would hire them. So it's important that you know that. Internships and co-ops can be very helpful in developing your own source of individuals to come to work for you later, and then that way you can evaluate them as they're going through their schooling. You can outsource, which means having outside vendors supply services, and a lot of companies nowadays do that with cafeterias. They also do that with cleaning crews. Or you can offshore, like some of the companies do now with their telephone services, where they're in India. And sometimes that helps, and sometimes that can be a hindrance. Normally, you don't have a lot of walk-ins anymore as candidates because there's just too many issues that can happen. You want to have an opportunity to screen them before they just walk in the door. But a lot of fast food places, they put the signs up and people walk in and they assess them right away and have them fill out an application, and sometimes even interviewing them. So sometimes that can be a good way of doing that. but mostly it's for entry-level type positions that you would want to do that. You can also look to non-traditional older members who may just want to work part-time, and you can have flexible work options. And Chick-fil-A comes to mind because they tend to have older adults who work part-time for them, and they are very good, and they just need flexibility. But we all need to make sure that we are recruiting for diversity. Single parents, minorities and women, disabled, and welfare to work are 4 of the areas. So the purpose of the application is to collect information and then be able to verify it, especially in the areas of education and work history. So that gives you kind of in a nutshell, what we need to do with personnel planning and recruiting. And remember, you need to do a job analysis to figure out what the job description is, then decide what kind of recruiting you're going to do and how you're going to advertise the fact that you have job openings, build your pool, and now in the next chapter we'll talk about the wonderful world of testing and selection, including interviews. So I hope this has been helpful to you, and again, I will post videos regarding the content, little lecturettes that you would hear me do in the classroom if we were meeting in the classroom all the time. If you have any questions, send me an email. I look forward to reading your responses on your assignments. And again, if you have any questions, just send me an email. Thanks again. I will talk to you soon. Bye.